Thank you for joining us today for the virtual Sunday service with the Center for Creative Living. CCL, a charter of the Universal Church of the Master, has served and supported the spiritual needs of its community here in the Bay Area for over 20 years.
Welcome to the Center for Creative Living. I am the Reverend Doti Boon, and I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a very difficult week, and I want you to look at the positive energies that you can find within yourself. We are all children of the one Creator. And so instead of thinking about them and us, think about the we, who we are as children of the Creator. And as you think about that, bring in some of the fluffy clouds you see around me this morning. Bring in the laughter, the light, the joy that's around each one of us so that we can move forward. Because when you are angry, frustrated, scared, it stops your forward movement. And this is a time to want to move forward into a new era. Can you do that? Now, I had a very difficult week. A dear friend of mine, Michael Berry, passed away Tuesday morning of COVID. He was one of those people that seemed to have been in my life forever. I knew Michael for over 40 years. And Michael was a healer. He had owned a massage school. He not only gave of himself, but he offered to help people heal, to help people move from one place to another, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. He was into helping people with the movement in their life. Michael worked at KKUP, and he was in charge of the jazz program there. And you know, when I heard that Michael had made his transition, I immediately saw this band of angels all playing jazz, welcome him into spirit. Because he, here on earth, was a very spiritual person. He was very proud of graduating from St. Mary's College. He was very proud of his ability to help heal. And when I say proud, I don't mean a pride of his, but it was more an awareness of the spiritual energy that was flowing through him. So I want all of you during this program to take a moment to bless Michael in his journey and see him playing his saxophone. Yeah, he was a saxophone player in that wonderful celestial band of angels. Okay? Now today's service is going to be about another celestial angel, Dr. Martin Luther King. And we are going to be hearing quotes. We're going to be hearing talk about who he was, what he is about. Because he's in each one of us. When I say what he is, that's that part of your heart that vibrates every time you hear about MLK. And you go, yes, he was a true peacemaker. Right now, for the next week, while we're going through very many things, I want you to be a peacemaker. Think of everybody you know in a positive way. Think of people who are out demonstrating in a positive way. People who are protesting in a positive way. And if you can't think of something really positive, think of the fact that that is a daughter or a son of our delightful Creator. And now I want you to listen to our wonderful Reverend Ann Corbin as she does a prayer and a message. That's going to be followed by our Reverend Dr. Ayleen Augustine, who is going to be doing our talk. And then Reverend Janet Childs is going to be doing meditation, accompanied by videos produced by Reverend Corry Gott. And as I mentioned last week, a lot of reverends here. And we want you to know that if you want to become a reverend of the Universal Church of the Master, just call me. I'd be glad to sponsor you in you're becoming a minister. And my phone number is 408-220-5780. And that's a number where you can reach the Center for Creative Living. And you can find out, how do I become a minister? Because I know you are truly ministering your life. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of our AIDS retreat, the AIDS retreat is going to be held this Friday. It's going to be on Zoom. And this is put on by the Center for Living with Dying, which is part of the Bill Wilson Center. And if you haven't heard of it, it's so magnificent. It's for people who are HIV positive and their caregivers. And it's one of these things where you can tune in on Zoom and listen to amazingly uplifting stories and energies by, there again, our Reverend Janet Childs. We have things still going on at CCL, even though it's not being held at the building, as it's being held virtually. And so if you haven't heard about the AIDS retreat, I want you to call either the Bill Wilson Center or call me, 408-220-5780, and I'll give you the connection to the Zoom. Okay. And now, Reverend Ann.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Ann Corbin, Associate Pastor at the Center for Creative Living, and I'm honored to bring you this morning's opening prayer. I'd really like to start by thanking Reverend Dr. Ayleen Augustine for giving me the space to heal and for doing the opening prayers on my scheduled days with so much ease and grace. I'm so appreciative of the love and support that I receive not only from her, but also Reverend Doti Boon, Reverend Corky Whitaker, Reverend Dr. Janet Childs, and each and every one of you. You know, my year ended with losing my mom, and although it was expected, it still was not easy. I am so blessed that she was able to call me 1 week before she passed. She wanted to say goodbye, I love you, and she wanted to express pride in me, as well as wanting to apologize for any mistakes that she had made throughout my lifetime. And I had the opportunity to do the same with her. What a great gift that was. You know, she was so sharp in her mind all the way through the very end, even though her body failed. So I'm feeling very comforted now in knowing that she's with my pop, my brother, and all those that she loves that have passed before her. You know, it's been a rough year for all of us, and we've all had a great deal to handle. And there's going to be more coming forward as well. So hold on to your hats. Please know that you are loved and supported by so many, including CCL, UCM, and most of all by Creator. Now is the time to be extra loving and gentle with yourself. In our deepest center, when we are in touch with that deep love that connects us to all that is, we can tune into the higher vibrations of light and love and be filled with that energy. We cannot change anyone except ourselves, so be good to yourself. By being centered in love, we radiate that love, and that's how we become the pebble in the water, rippling out love and light to all. Now close your eyes and take a deep breath in, breathing in love, light, healing, kindness, and all things that make you feel good. Hold on to that, and then breathe out, letting go of all that does not serve you, and placing anything that you want to release into a virtual basket that sits right beside you. Dearest Creator, Thank you for this day as we virtually gather together to celebrate life. We are so grateful for your love and light shining on us and within us every moment, giving us the strength to get through these taxing times. Thank you for your encouragement to stand in our truth and speak up in a way that does no harm to others, for we know that we can have differences and still be unconditionally loving, just as you unconditionally love each of us. Bless all those that have recently passed, showing them the light so they may have an easy transition. Bring courage and blessings to all those going through struggles right now, whether that be health, financial, or anything else causing dis-ease and discomfort. May despair be turned to hope and fear turned to trust in you. Thank you for the reminder that even when we do not feel it, you always have our back and you know what is best for us. May we feel your divine guidance and blessings even when the answer to our prayer is no or not now. Let peace fill our hearts, and may that peace and love overflow to all so that the whole universe can feel it. Thank you for our first responders and for all those in the front lines, police, firefighters, paramedics, nurses, grocery workers, delivery drivers, and more. Thank you for our wonderful speaker, Reverend Dr. Ayleen, who will bring us a beautiful message as she always does. Thank you for the Center for Creative Living and for the Universal Church of the Master for encouraging us to always come from our heart, and that brings us a community of love. Most of all, Creator, thank you for you. We love you so much. In gratitude and love, I say, blessed be, amen, and so it is.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Dr. Ayleen Augustine, and it is my pleasure to be here to speak regarding the wonderful, amazing legacy of someone who has literally changed the course of human events. Now, it's interesting because every time, Martin Luther King Day comes, I always think back to many, many, many years ago when my sons were attending a preschool over in Louisiana where we lived. And I was a teacher. And we were celebrating Martin Luther King Day. And my son was chosen, they wanted to do like a reenactment. And my son was chosen to be Dr. King. And, we got him his little suit and, he was very excited, and he actually had lines, and, he had to say, I have a dream that my 4 children will be judged by the not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, which Jason was only 5. And, he needed to get that line down, and he had to say that and free at last, free at last. And, we worked on that for quite a while, and the day came, and it was interesting because there were parents who did not have their children go to school because they felt that it was propaganda. But most of the parents did arrive, and they all gathered, and, the time came, and Jason, he looked at me and he was smiling and confident. And another little girl in the class who played Coretta, and her job was to sit, and she was told, it's like, okay, every time he talks, you go, yay! And she was very excited about that. And as I sat there with a camera and, filming my son, as he said, I have a dream, suddenly tears came to my eyes, and I couldn't hold the camera, and I couldn't stop crying. And, people were looking at me. And in that moment, I had 2 thoughts. One, that one day my son might grow up to be that leader. Because when, Martin Luther King, who was born Michael, when he was that age, who knew that he would grow to be the man that he was? What if my son were to grow to be that man? And just, even though it was just a school production that no one would ever really see and really didn't matter in the world, my son became a part of that legacy, or at least to me. The other thought I had was that the man who spoke those words had a mother who knew that because of her son's choices, because of how he chose to walk in this world, because he chose to stand by his convictions, that he would die. And being a mother, it was very hard not to empathize with the woman who probably stood with tears in her eyes as her son spoke. Afterwards, my son Jason came up and he was very confused. So I told him that mommy was crying because she was so very, very proud that he did such a very, very good job. And it's funny, I still tear up thinking about that. Because I think about all the people in history who stood for what they believed in, even though they knew they would pay the ultimate price for it. And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he walked a particular path that was not common and was not entirely popular. The path of peace. The path of nonviolent protest. Because what is our instinct when someone pushes at us? It's to push back. Eye for an eye, to give as good as you get. Somebody comes at you, you go right back at them. And, it's human nature. It is absolutely human nature. It's a part of our survival instinct. So, what was it about the path of peace? And I spent time watching interviews, and it was very interesting because in the interview, or in one of the interviews, and this was, back in the 60s, he was asked, well, do you promote nonviolence because, it avoids people getting hurt? because if the term they used was the Negroes fought back, that they would be completely outnumbered and outgunned. So was it surrendering to the fact that you were facing overwhelming firepower? And Dr. King said no. He said, while yes, those things are true, the reason for nonviolent protest is a moral one. It is a reason that is based in spirit. It is based in what he fundamentally believed was right. And because it struck such a chord in so many people, they followed his example. They peacefully protested even though they were attacked. They did not attack back. And again, this was not a popular viewpoint. And there were many who basically stated that the only way that there would be peace would be as if it were taken violently. If those who oppressed were forced to stop. And in going through different quotes, I came across one that was really very telling in his belief about nonviolent protest and compassion. And I would like to share that with you now. Here is the true meaning and value of compassion and nonviolence when it helps us to see the enemy's point of view, to hear his questions, to know his assessment of ourselves. For from his view, we may indeed see the basic weaknesses of our own condition, and if we are mature, we may learn and grow and profit from the wisdom of the brothers who are called the opposition. So from his words, it took the whole concept, at least to me, of the idea of nonviolent protest and compassion to a different place. It connected us to those who opposed us. It connected us as beings. It humanized the person who was on the other side of the argument. And I found that very interesting when I looked at that quote, because it really took on that idea and the responsibility that we have, that the people who oppose us, first, still have their humanity, and second, are people who we can make it possible to exchange ideas with. It's not about cutting someone out because they believe differently from you, or that they do things that that are not right. That idea that those who oppose us in a way become our mirrors. They reflect within ourselves. They give us the reason to look within ourselves. And I was so encouraged and truly touched by this, because this is something that I do believe. And yes, I get very angry at things that I see, just like everybody else. I feel saddened by what I see, just like everybody else. And the point is that what we see and what we experience and what it is that we perceive about the world should never take away our ability to choose. Anger is healthy. Rage removes our ability to choose. What we witnessed was rage. It was frustration. It was fear. And when I think about how I believe that Reverend Dr. King would have responded, that he would have been up there telling people, you don't have to do this. Do not engage. Now, I've heard a lot of people expressing a lot of things that, well, I hope they all get COVID. Okay, it's honest. Oh, they should have shot them all down. They should have plowed them down. Okay? And where does that live within each and every one of us? How easy is it to fall into that type of thinking pattern? And does it bring us closer to our spiritual truth, or does it take us away from it? Now, understand, never judge yourself for a feeling. It's simply there for us to study. It's there for us to look at. It's there for us to say, I know that I am a being of both light and shadow. And life and my spirituality is about finding the balance point of both. To accept that both are a part of me and to choose light. And it has to be a conscious choice. And it's not something we choose once. It is a choice that we make for ourselves. And the legacy and the example of Dr. King, when he was stabbed prior to his assassination, he was stabbed by a black woman, almost died. And he refused to be angry at her. He refused, and there were many who just wanted to, just do horrible things to this woman. First off, he knew she was mentally ill. But even if she wasn't, he was not going to answer with anger or with violence. He forgave her. Forgiveness is a very special thing. For me, I define forgiveness as the point when I will no longer give someone else the power to inspire in me a feeling I don't want to feel. Whether that be anger, shame, a desire for revenge. Because those feelings only work against me. They don't actually affect the other person. So I know I've reached forgiveness when that person or event no longer inspires that in me. When I can then be neutral. And yes, that is probably one of the hardest things about a spiritual practice. It's one of the hardest things as spiritual people that we have to explain. Because often people will ask, how can you be spiritual? How can you have faith when all these horrible things are happening in the world? And that can be a very difficult question to answer. And each person has to find their own answer. Because the answer that you give to somebody who's asking that can be a very life-changing moment for them. So choose wisely and carefully how you do answer that question. Normally, the way I answer it is I talk about the 3 ways that God answers prayers. I also say that we have free will, which is the greatest gift that we were ever given. And when we act upon it, that is us embracing that divine part of ourselves, that divine trust that is placed in us. Honestly, the fact that, I do believe that there is a creator who trusts in our potential enough to let us mess up, to let us go through our growing pains. And Dr. King seemed to really embrace that idea of the potential of humanity. He didn't look at what was. He focused on what could be. Yes, he acknowledged the injustice. He acknowledged the things that needed changing, and he worked tirelessly to see those changes happen. While at the same time, he always spoke of what could be and the world he envisioned. And he really embraced that. And as I said, his viewpoints were not popular, and there were many who were with him that probably did not agree, that said, look, you're making yourself a target, you're making yourself a victim. Nonviolent protest is, it's viewed as weak. Actually, it takes the greatest strength possible to override primal instinct, to override the desire to hurt because you've been hurt. And I am so impressed by that. It is something that we honestly need more of. And as I was watching his interviews, I noticed that he very rarely smiled. And I had the feeling that he had a lot of weight on his shoulders. He was fighting a cause that he probably was pretty clear on the outcome, which in one of his speeches, he spoke very prophetically about what it was that he expected, that he would not reach that mountain with them. And I think that his ability to find balance with that, his ability to accept that and still move forward anyway, was tremendously inspiring to others. It wasn't so much what he said, but the fact that he lived what he said. He looked for the best in all people. And at a time when the races were tremendously divided, as they are now. Sometimes I wonder what some of those old civil rights leaders would be thinking in 2021 and 2020, that the world would be this. Would they be disappointed? Or would they be encouraged that people were still fighting? I like to think the second. It is a very divisive world that we're living in. And, I think of times in my life where racial injustice kind of came and stood right in my face. I've had the N-word screamed at me. And I have been the recipient of discrimination. And I do not lose my faith in humanity, because I know that we are better than this, that is the exception, it is not the rule, and that it is a garden that needs to be constantly tended. We cannot promote peace in others if we cannot find it in ourselves. We cannot promote love for all beings and for everyone if we cannot find it within ourselves. We cannot stand in the shadow of those who fought and died in the name of peace if we are not willing to acknowledge that there's a lot of work to do, both externally and internally. So what can we do? When, the song, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me," that truly means something. It means we hold ourselves to a higher standard. It means that, yes, we can stand up if we hear an inappropriate comment from someone who stands in opposition to us, that we will face that and deny that and address that in the exact same way that we would if it was one of our friends who said something inappropriate. When we can be able to look within ourselves and say, okay, there's some stuff there. There's some comments, little things, maybe even a joke. Somebody gets hurt by a joke, it's not funny. And if we are willing to hold ourselves accountable, if we are willing to gently remind even our friends and family that if something is said that is not appropriate, maybe, you don't have to jump down their throats, but maybe say, that comment you made, I'm really kind of curious about that. And opening a dialogue. We don't have to make others be wrong in order to do the right thing. And it is not so much what we say to people. We can talk to people about compassion. We can talk to people about love. We can talk to people about seeing the face of God in everyone, of viewing each and every person with the same love that God views us. And that is a very tall order. And if we are going to speak it, it is not going to have the impact if that is not how we are living. I mean, it's down to where the rubber meets the road. And if we can hold on and say, no, I will not make a comment, even a joking comment, about someone that could be hurtful. I will not sit idly by and listen to someone else say something. I will give them my opinion, and they may follow it or not. But by saying it, you've brought it to their attention, and it gives them the opportunity to change. We can be a very good mirror for others. And pretty much it starts with us. Do we have a dream? Who are we inside? What is our truth? And it is just something that we have to daily work at. And some days, yes, are better than others. We don't have to be perfect. And we can strive to do the best we can and be in the best integrity that we possibly can be, if we are going to carry that legacy, which starts with compassion. It starts with acknowledging the humanity of others. It starts with being able to look past, the surface. When I was in chiropractic college, there was an elderly instructor, and he was, everybody hated being in his class because he was very precise, and he was, he was a doctor, but he wasn't a chiropractor. He was an MD. And he always wore his coat, and he was always very proper, and he was up there. And his name was Dr. Brown. And his class was on geriatrics. And he would often comment how young people really didn't know how to deal with elderly patients because they didn't understand them, and he wanted them to understand them. And, as in most classes, people had a tendency to not attend except for during the days of, when there was a exam. And he would often comment, "Oh, well, I can see all of you here, all these faces I don't recognize." And yet there was something that I found very compelling about him. How he spoke his truth, how he walked, his walk. And we ended up developing a friendship, being one of the older members of the class, and I was there at every class. Afterwards, I would, after class, I would always greet him and ask how he's doing and how his wife was. And one day he looked at me, and we were talking about names, and he said, there was somebody very famous with the name Arlene. And I looked at him and I said, well, my mother named me after the actress Arlene Dahl. And a huge smile broke out on his face. And he said, your mother named you after one of the most beautiful women in the world, but don't tell my wife. Then he said that I reminded him, and this is a quote, that I reminded him of a wonderful Negro woman who worked at the school, the medical school he attended. And some students heard that. And I mean, I walked out of the room and they just were ready to raise a huge ruckus. They wanted to go and report him to the dean. They wanted to, oh my God, he's racist. And, and he called you a Negro and that's not okay. And we need to report him. And I asked why. Well, he called you, a Negro. And I said, well, I grew up as a part of the generation where that wasn't unusual. And, well, but, I said, look, his intention, he said Negro, it wasn't the special N word. And he meant it in honor. As he remembered that woman, you could see he held her with huge respect. And why on earth would I be offended by that? It's not a common term now, but yes, a lot of us remember when it was. But the thing is that it was not something, I was not going to judge him based on the use of that word, but in the context that he was applying it. And, I actually had someone argue with me that I was allowing racism. And, I said, I think maybe you need to dial it back a little bit. It's okay. And I had to remind them that I grew up with that generation. And I was 5 when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. died. And one of my earliest memories is one of the few times in my life that I saw both my parents cry. And it is, the fact that he represented so much hope. But the thing is, the hope did not die. It was changed. And without a figurehead, yes, it was shifted. But the dream lived on. And the dream lives on in each and every person who believes in it. The dream lives on in each and every person who chooses to honor humanity. And I think that, well, all things considered, I think we're coming along quite nicely. And yes, we are in bad times, and yes, a lot of very bad stuff has been bubbled to the surface. But the thing is, now that it's at the surface, we can do something about it. We can be able to create the change because we can no longer ignore it. So then it becomes, what kind of change do we want to create? And what do we use as the blueprint of that change? And as I was watching interviews, I came across, it was a talk that he gave at a junior high. And it was, I think it was 6 months before he died. And it was called The Blueprint of Your Life. And, it was a short talk, but it was so powerful. And he spoke of, that your life is like a house. And in order to build the best house, you need to have a good blueprint. That's vital. And as he spoke of the points, he talked about the very first step. And that I would like to share with you. Number 1 in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. That was such a powerful, powerful statement. And the idea that in order to move forward, in order to change the world, in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve, the first thing you have to do is believe in yourself. To believe in the somebodyness of yourself. Because often when we are at peace with ourselves, it's a lot easier to find peace in the world around us. When we can believe in ourselves, it's easier to believe in the potential of the world around us. And if Dr. King taught us anything, it was to believe in the potential of what could be. To believe that one day it would not be the color of our skin, and now our version of that would be the color of our skin, the way that we walk in our gender, the way that we express our passions, the way that we, manifest the things that we want to have, the clothes that we wear, the way that we would like our appearance to be. Those are all things that we can be able to look at, because we can look at anything that causes us to be separated, including our belief systems. It is hard when people are not tolerant of the beliefs of others. And yes, I have seen that. And it is something that, as the president of the church, has been something that I have put a lot of prayer and a lot of work into. Because the most amazing thing about the Universal Church of the Master is that it truly embraces the idea that many rivers lead to the same ocean and many paths lead to the top of the mountain. That same mountain that Dr. King said he stood at, and that he had seen the promised land. And what the promised land means can be different for each and every person, and that's okay, because we can each have our own promised land. We can each see the amazing potential of what this world can be. And all those promised lands can sit peacefully and joyfully next to each other like a group of gardens lined up side by side. They don't have to have the same flowers in it. They don't have to be set up the same way in order to be able to both be beautiful. I will always believe in the ultimate potential of the divine beings having a human experience that we are. And it takes work. It takes acknowledging when we are not having one of our best moments. It takes taking ownership of our responsibility to truly walk our talk. To be able to say, I may not have gotten it perfect, but I did my best. And to look for that divine light in others, even in those we disagree with, and in honor of Dr. King, even those who would wish harm upon us. It doesn't mean that we cannot fight through, legal means and with our votes. This last election showed the power of the vote. The power that happens when people get together and make their choices known. And it also is very important to remember that no matter what someone believes, they are also a divine being having a human experience. and we can be able to walk side by side without having to agree. And often, one of the best ways to find compromise is to stop talking at each other and start talking with each other. A closed fist or an open hand? Which would you rather take? And that means that if it is what we would choose to receive, then it should be what we choose to offer. It's not always easy, and it's not always instinct, and it is a choice. And I am grateful and honored to know each and every one of you. For as we are all beings of light and shadow, just struggling to try to do the best we can each and every day, it matters. It makes a difference. And every opportunity we have to see a closed fist in front of us and find a way to help it become an open hand, that truly is aiding and honoring the next 7 generations. And it's always a work. It is daily, it is conscious, and it is totally doable. We've got this. We can do this. And we can help one another do this. So just do your best, because that's good enough. I do my best because that's all I can do. None of us are going to get it perfect. And with each day that we do our best, it makes our best that much better. And it also makes the world that much better. We can stand up for justice. We can fight against those things that take away from human dignity. We can be passionate in what we feel and what we are fighting for. And we can do it without compromising our peace or our compassion. So thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for choosing to walk the path of the open hand. And it doesn't matter how many times you stumble, because we all stumble. We help each other get up. Happy Martin Luther King Day. May you walk in peace. May you walk in grace. From my heart to yours. Love you. And take care.
The standing people sway and bend in the moving hand of changing wind. The challenge is up to us again to build a house a house of truth. In the stormy color of the sky, imprints of the question, oh, the question why. This suffering no one can deny. It's written in the scrolls, of peace. When the sunrise is breaking, oh, it's breaking through the fears and hopes that hold us to our circle round with me, with you, protects our vision in this place and time. Emerge from the wisdom of your birth. Break through the barrier to what you are worth. Create your comfort and build your strength. For we are here together again, together again, oh, together again, together again, together again. We are marching for freedom, 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 oh. We are marching for freedom, freedom today. We are marching for freedom, freedom, freedom. We are marching for freedom, freedom we pray. We are marching for freedom, freedom, freedom. We are marching for freedom, freedom today. We are marching for freedom, freedom, freedom. We are marching for freedom, freedom. We pray today, today.
Thank you for joining us for this celebration of faith and fellowship. We'll be back next Sunday. And for those of you, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave them in the comments section. If you appreciate this video and the work that the Center for Creative Living is doing, please press like on the video. You can share the video, and also please subscribe, because that will help this community and the church grow. Remember, in these difficult and challenging times, The opportunity to give and support an organization that has done so much for the community is tremendously important. Please help the Center for Creative Living continue in the wonderful work that it does. We will make it through this. We will be stronger for it. Our faith will carry us. Be blessed, be safe, and have a wonderful week.